Welcome, everyone. Laura Wayman, the Dementia Whisperer here. As promised last week, I want to further describe dementia symptoms and causes today. So let's review. Dementia is a general term for a group of brain function losses and symptoms presented with that loss, but it has to have a cause. Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia symptoms, accounting for 60 to 80% of those with dementia symptoms. So how can you tell whether someone's symptoms are a sign of normal aging or a sign of dementia? Well, there are some specific signs. For example, all causes of dementia involve mental decline that is a step down from a higher level of functioning. For example, the person did not always have poor informational processing and is severe enough to interfere with the usual activities and daily life and affects more than one of the following 4 core mental abilities. Recent informational processing, or the ability to learn and recall new information. Language, the ability to write or speak or understand the written or spoken word. Visual spatial function, the brain's ability to translate visual signals into an accurate impression of where objects are located in space, and the ability to understand and use symbols or maps, etc. Executive function, the ability to plan, to reason, to solve problems, and to focus on a task. There are over 100 causes of loss of these kinds of brain functions and the subsequent dementia symptoms. Some of the more widely known types are Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, which is an early presentation of symptoms, mixed dementia, Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia occurring at the same time, dementia with Lewy body or Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's disease, frontotemporal dementia such as Pick's disease, Creutzfeldt-Jacobs disease, normal pressure hydrocephalus, Huntington's disease, Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome. These various causes of dementia have different warning signs, rates of progression, and behaviors, which is one of the reasons it's important to possibly get an accurate diagnosis of the cause of the dementia symptoms. An accurate diagnosis means that the person with dementia symptoms and his or her caregivers can learn more about the likely, though not certain, progression in a person with that specific cause. Medications can help relieve some of the more troubling behaviors for certain causes of dementia. However, these medications are especially useful when dementia-aware behavior modification techniques, such as those described in my book, are used together. Progressive causes of dementia symptoms, including Alzheimer's disease, affect key thought processes, including the following 6 areas. Memory, not just memory though, a person with declining memory processing. Memory may not, for example, be able to keep in mind that getting dressed and getting into a car is a sequence leading up to going to dinner with friends. Events begin to exist on their own without being linked to other events, and none has the larger context. There can be problems with language and communication. The ability to communicate is what allows us to connect with others in the world, to get and give information of all sorts. And we rely on communication to express our needs and our feelings. Language is the most obvious form of communication. But of course, there's other ways of communicating too. We rely on gestures, body language, facial expressions. Through the loss of brain function presenting in dementia symptoms, the ability to communicate in all these ways is gradually lost. And the first problem is usually with word finding. People begin to struggle to find that right word for the situation, such as the appropriate word to fit into a conversation. They may begin to forget names of people who are well known to them. Later, they may have difficulty expressing ideas. They may know what they want to say, but may not be able to find the words to say it. All of this can lead to embarrassment, frustration, possibly prompting the person to withdraw. Communication difficulties and frustrations can produce emotional outbursts. Some people with these problems can often blame the caregivers. There can be challenges with reasoning. People with dementia cannot be reasonable. Most of us expect others to be reasonable, and we assume that they will be reasonable when we interact with them. Throughout daily life, we regularly appeal to reason, and we employ logic and persuasion in many situations, and we expect others to use logic and persuasion in return. Most of all, we expect that these forms of interaction will carry the day. Causes of dementia symptoms turns these expectations upside down. Increasingly, normal forms of interaction like persuasion will no longer work. Logic will fail and possibly even backfire because we're asking the person to think ahead through a series of steps, and this will cause confusion, agitation, anxiety, withdrawal, and even impetuous behavior. As the person with dementia loses his or her reasoning power, the caregiver will need to take over control, think for them. Judgment. Judgment is the ability we use when we ask the question, what if? Asking ourselves this question allows us to judge the safety, benefits, consequences, drawbacks of any situation. And the ability to imagine the possible outcomes of a situation is very important for our personal safety. Unfortunately, this capacity is lost relatively early in dementia symptoms because of distorted thinking. Judgment may be poor or faulty and utterly different from the person's previous decision-making abilities and behaviors, and the person's own insight into his or her thinking problems varies greatly among individuals and changes as the disease advances. At first, the person with dementia symptoms may be cognizant that he or she has these problems, but later he or she will not realize that there is a problem. As it gets worse, they have difficulty knowing how difficult it is for them to make a judgment. And all of this makes it hard to know whether or how much to involve that person in critical life choices. Challenges with abstract thought. We rely on abstract thought to deal with everything in our lives that is not concrete. In fact, numerous things we take for granted are abstract. Numbers and directions are abstract, as is time. The past and the future are held in order with the power of abstraction. Possibilities are abstract, including the ability to think about what ifs in our lives. Being able to know where or how much is part of abstraction, and so are relationships, the connections we share among family members and friends. Like other powers of thought, abstraction declines with the progress of dementia symptoms. Again, this ability is lost fairly early in the disease, which means that many of the concepts we rely on to live in this world no longer have meaning for the person who has dementia symptoms. There's perception challenges. Normal perception involves two features. First, our senses allow us to take in the world around us through sight and hearing, and also through touch and smell and taste. We take note of things outside of ourselves. And second, our brains make sense out of what we observe. People with dementia symptoms often make mistakes in sensing and interpreting things. For example, they may interpret images on the television as being real and start talking back to them, or reflections, including their own reflection in a mirror, can be mistaken for real people who suddenly come and go. Patterns in floor tiles or carpets can be mistaken for holes as that depth perception knowledge begins to be lost and that they need to try and step over or avoid. They may be seen as uncrossable barriers, and such misperceptions are sometimes called pseudo-hallucinations. Since the root cause of pseudo-hallucinations may actually be situated in poor hearing or eyesight, testing and correcting hearing and visual problems can sometimes help. However, even when the person who has dementia symptoms is able to see or hear clearly, he or she may still be unable to interpret or process things accurately. For more information on all of these different dementia symptoms, symptom management, causes, dementia awareness, read my book, A Loving Approach to Dementia Care, now in its 3rd edition, published by Johns Hopkins University Press, or check out my website, laurawayman.com. That was a lot of information. Signing off for now, with love, the Dementia Whisperer.